Eastern. So you can
I'm ready.
register there to join. Chris,
A special time, huh?
nice of you to join. Well, yeah, we're doing it at 1 instead of 12.
It's
So
special.
special and different. Got to give
Mm-hmm.
people the heads up so they know what's up.
Got to keep people on their toes. What's going on? Episode 101, huh? We're going to
I
get in here in
know. I've
just a
been
minute.
killing it on the pre-show, waiting for
Love it.
the main event
Love it.
to
Had
arrive.
some extra prep because we got some special events happening tonight. Some things. We got the next 100 episodes. We got to keep it interesting, so we're going to do some crazy stuff. We'll see. Okay. All right, everybody, let's get into it. Welcome back to Demand Gen Live, episode 101. Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for the people, everyone that participated in episode 100. It was an awesome event. It was great to hear some of the stories of people that have been successful. I know there was a lot of stories that were not told, that a lot of other people that have been very successful with the information. And so just wanted to take a minute and express my gratitude. I'm sure Megan feels the same way. Really appreciate this community, all of you all that show up and listen to the content and get value from it. Another thing is that as a collective, Demand Gen Live, or State of Demand Gen, that is, we got a notification email today that said that we have crossed into the top 10 marketing podcasts. Number 9 as ranked by Good Pods, which was really cool. So shout out to everybody. If you're listening on Apple and you haven't left a review yet, would appreciate it if you just hit pause on the podcast and leave a quick rating or review. I'd really appreciate it as we try and maybe climb up to number 1. Who knows? Yeah, it's got Eric dancing over here. People are fired up. Awesome. Megan mentioned, but I'll do it because I might get cut off for the podcast, so I'll mention it again. We have a keynote coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern this Thursday. That'll be March 24th. Topics TBD. Check your email as we narrow in on that. And let's get into it. As promised, I have I'm going to talk through breaking down the double funnel. I've been hearing people talk about this. I have not communicated my point of view on it. I spent some time over the week and the weekend looking at the framework, seeing how people were implementing it, understanding what people are doing, and wanted to go way back to the old Demand Gen Live days where we do the screen share, and let's break this down. So let's see if I can do this.
This is why everybody came tonight. That's why I showed up. Very excited about the double funnel. Not even want to know what you gotta say.
All right, so let's take a look here. What we have is the topo double funnel. In the bottom section, you got this lead volume to engaged leads. And in the top, you got these target accounts with engaged accounts, and then they all go and funnel back into SDR qualification into an opportunity and blah, 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 blah. Let's talk through. So this is what's happening I can see how we got here. So companies were originally just running the bottom part of it, just the volume of lead funnel. And then they were like, oh, but we're moving to account-based, but we don't want to rock the boat too much, so we're not going to tell people to stop doing the stuff that clearly doesn't fucking work anymore. And we're just going to have them keep doing their MQL machines, so we don't have to drive any organizational change. And what we're going to do is just tell them to add ABM software and run account-based on top of it with the same intention of just having our sales team call people that don't want to buy right now. And so let's talk through all the different places where this model breaks down, in my opinion. Step 1, the lead funnel is totally broken. The fact that this is even in the model anymore, where you drive a high volume of leads and then you have your SDR team call people that didn't ask to talk to you, like, this stuff has clearly not worked for almost a half decade, probably more than that if you really looked at the data. Like, the fact that we still have this in play where a firm like Topo is telling marketers to do this stuff is wild. So this is clearly broken. There's no quality control metric inside of this. So just like generate a bunch of MQLs, call people, and we'll just get what we get. It's one piece where it's totally busted. Number 2, there's no demand creation strategy in here. So all that we're doing is just having two different motions. One, we're going after target accounts to collect leads and then call people in the target accounts, cold call them. And then we got actual leads, people, and we're going to collect leads from them. And then we're going to cold call those people when they didn't ask for it. None of it involves trying to get buyers to come to you because they want to buy. Everything is geared toward outbound sales. This is the fundamental flaw in the topo double funnel, in the serious decisions demand waterfall. It all revolves around outbound sales like it's 2012 still. Like, buyers want to buy differently. I don't know why this is so difficult to understand. We need to prioritize having high intent buyers come over and say, I want to talk to your sales team about buying this stuff now. Why is that not part of this motion? Number 3, having a bunch of people funnel into one place where there's SDR qualification, regardless of the level of buying intent that they have, creates a suboptimal buying experience. Why are we funneling everyone into one funnel when they have different levels of buying intent? They were sourced through different sources. They probably, some of them came from high intent, like conversion sources like a demo. Other ones were totally cold call inbound. Other ones we gave away gift cards, and we're going to mix them all into one pot. Suboptimal buying experience leading to lower sales team performance. Number 4, everything moves into one funnel and then into opportunities, and not all SQOs are created equal. So you get all of these different opportunities in place. It makes it very difficult to forecast because you got some coming from cold outbound that you're going to win at 11%. And you got some coming in from your website that you're going to win at 50%. And you just mix them all together, so it's difficult to forecast, it's difficult to plan, and it's difficult to optimize. To illustrate this point, I actually pulled some data. 60 million ARR SaaS company from different marketing lead sources and the qualified opportunity win rates. Website demo request, 41%. Gift card incentivized meeting request, 13%. Field marketing special types of events, 19%. Trade show booths badge scan, 21%. Affiliate like referral channel, 8%. Employee referral, 50%. So you can see the spread here. Some of these opportunities win at 40 to 50%. Other ones win at 8 to 13%. But they all get mixed together, and then you just measure on how many qualified opportunities you get or how much qualified pipeline you get, regardless of the win rates of these sources. The reason the win rates are so much different is because there's different levels of buying intent when people convert and enter your pipeline based on these sources. And so mixing them together creates a very dangerous game where you don't exactly know what you're getting and what you're going to get out of it. So those are some of the challenges with the double funnel. My recommendation here, I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to give me a couple weeks. We're going to show you what I've architected instead in terms of a framework. It's basically going a step farther than this, which is instead of focusing on the motion, high volume leads, and then we're going to do ABM over here, it's really focused on the pipeline source and what is going on with the buyer. Is the buyer coming to us saying, hey, I'd love to buy now? Or are we going to them and saying, hey, do you want to have a meeting with us? Or is our partner channel sourcing some things? Or are we getting them at trade shows? And if you instead of having them all funnel into one funnel, if you break them into individual different sources, it makes it way easier to plan. It makes it way easier to hold people accountable. It makes it way easier to optimize. It makes it way easier to forecast revenue. And so some details forthcoming on that. But the take home here is like, how do we still have models running that are built around high volumes of leads with no accountability to actual outcomes? I'm very surprised that a company like Topo, which is now owned by Gartner, would support this. We'll pause there and see if any questions. Maybe David, this seems like a David K question topic.
David had an observation, which David, I miss hearing your voice. So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
share the observation that you shared in the chat, because I'm sure if you say that
Hello.
one sentence, it'll set Chris off and he'll keep talking.
Okay. Right. Okay. Fair enough. So my observation was in that chart that you just showed on the screen there. You'll notice that the very last box where the closed won deals come out
Mm-hmm.
is like a bigger box, implying that you have a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
when really there aren't a lot of them that come out. It could be a smaller box, the smallest box of all the boxes in that trail, but that doesn't look nearly as impressive, does it?
No, and the it has to be smaller by definition.
So
But makes for a really good graphic. So I'm looking forward to letting people kind of see we're working on our own go-to-market framework. A lot's being implemented with companies, but when we actually publish it, I want it to be well documented so people can actually go and implement it. So we need a little bit more time before we start to share that with people.
you'd be a hero if you could provide something like that for us.
Exactly, and you can run enterprise outbound, and you can run our pipe growth framework, and you can do partner, and you can do events all at the same time. And they don't compete with one another; they're complementary, and it works great.
That sounds a bit like magic. Can't wait to see this.
Cool, cool. Any other questions on the double funnel? Would love if anyone has things to think about. It's interesting. I actually hadn't encountered it all that often, but have seen it come up quite a bit recently, and so I'd be interested if anyone's thinking anything.
It's a good topic, and usually I think that the team is drumming up some thoughts and questions, I'm sure, as we speak. But you made a big comment of why you can't believe Topo is publishing this information. So what do you think is behind the reason? Why are they pushing this out?
It's interesting. I think they might have retracted it. I was doing some research over the weekend, and if you search for this, it's very difficult to find on Topo's website or Gartner post acquisition. And so perhaps they sort of sunset it, but still seeing it being implemented in practice. But the reason that I'm surprised is that it just doesn't make sense to it doesn't make sense to continue to push a high volume lead gen model anymore. It creates massive sales and marketing misalignment. It's super low efficiency. Buyers hate it. SDRs hate it. There's way better things that everyone in the company, including marketing, sales development, sales, leadership, could be doing instead. And so it's just the fact that that's even part of the model, I think, is concerning. But to their credit, maybe they don't support it anymore, because I actually couldn't find, they might have stripped it down. I could only find images in Google.
Yeah. Bob is coming at us with some questions that maybe taken us on a little bit of a left turn. You want to tackle the next agenda item before we open it up, or should we do a little bit of AMA for a minute?
Let's go to I'm going to go on a tangent. It's actually not the next agenda item, but we'll talk through it. But before we get into it, would love if everyone can use the hand emoji, or just raise your hand for the people that I can see, or drop a chat. I'll check all three. Just raise your hand if you have implemented self-reported attribution and it's been helpful for you. Raise your hand, we'll see, or just drop a chat. Okay, someone
all
can.
The hands are up.
Yeah, if someone can assess how generally how many people are on here and how many hands are up, that would be helpful.
I'm assessing for you as we speak.
If you actually could use the raise hand, it'll be a lot easier for us to calculate. So if you could actually use the raise hand feature of Zoom, that would be awesome.
Here we go.
Let's see. Keep it going. We'll give everyone a little bit of a second here. It's going to help for the next session. Okay. 65 people live. We got 16 hands raised. There's about 25%. If there's any insights that you got, feel free to drop them in the chat, or any types of examples. Because it was really interesting to see. We took last week off. I would have talked about it last week, but we had a little bit of a break. Really interesting to see attribution vendors pushing back on self-reported attribution as if it's competitive when it's not. Saying, oh, it doesn't work. And a company that had your best interest in mind would have said, this is a new way to get extra data to supplement all the stuff that we have from attribution software. We should help our customers do this. Maybe we should integrate it into our product. But instead, they push back because they think that it's competitive. So they tell you that it doesn't work because they care about themselves, not you. And that's an interesting theme because the only thing that the seat that I come from that the people like that are not in is that I have no horse in the race about what technology you use or anything like that. The only thing that I have a horse in the race for is that you get better results. And so that's really the difference. So when I saw that, it was like super clear to me. People are showing their cards that like there's absolutely nothing that comes away from an attribution software vendor by implementing self-reported attribution. But they feel like it is, so they tell you not to do it. So I just thought that was interesting. It brings up a lot of thinking and topics about the advice that gets given by technology vendors and whether that really does have your best interest in mind or not. All right, let's get to Bob's questions.
All right. Just like I missed David's voice, I miss yours, Bob. Come on the show. Welcome.
Hey, I wasn't expecting to come on live, but okay. Hey, I just had a question for you, Chris. Based off of what you know about my business, let's say 80K, ACV, and paid social leads, my primary marketing driver.
Mm-hmm.
We're at about 20% closing rate, and I was just curious to get your take on your experience from MedTech or anywhere else. Paid social leads, how would you feel about that baseline closing rate? That's essentially my marketing source. So I know it's lower than marketing source closing rate that you get from organic, but I was curious what you think about that as a baseline from paid social.
Closing rate from lead to customer, from qualified opt to customer, from meeting to customer. How do you define close rate?
Yeah, demo. Once they're like a demo request, and I do an intro meeting, and I don't disqualify them. So essentially, for you, I guess would be like an SQO at that point.
Mm-hmm. So after the meeting, then if they're not good or disqualified, you move them out, and all the people that get past the first meeting and are still in a deal process, you win 20% of them.
Correct.
Do you know out of all the leads how many you win?
I'd have to go back and
calculate. 3%, 5%.
Maybe a little bit less than 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So probably half of them are, people contact us from paid social looking for a job.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So those are disqualified.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of hard for me to say on that one. I mean, winning 20% post meeting, I think, is pretty good. Ours is, I think, currently about 26%. So, it's in the same range. Post meeting, we consider that qualified, and we're at 26%. So I think 20 is pretty strong, especially if they're coming with attribution from paid social.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I think you got some pretty good stuff there.
All right, great, thank you.
The next thing to look at is the percentage of raw leads that you win. So, like, you got to factor in how many meetings are you having that people don't get to the next step. And that would be the place that I would start to look at, because like just 20% forward doesn't tell you. It could take you 100 meetings to get one person to go there, and then you win 20% of those. So it's better to sort of look at it holistically than just from that forward.
One of the challenges are traditionally when I joined the company, the average sales cycle was well over a year. Mm-hmm. Our sales cycle now from paid social is about 4 months on average, with some have closed as quickly as like 2 to 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But I just closed one that first contacted us a year ago. And but the first touch was 5 years ago, before the company even went commercial, so it's all over the place, but they came back via paid social, and I'm using a last touch attribution of 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because like I think about the pipeline source and then attribution differently. Like I don't think it's the same thing. It's an evolving thought that I have. Like the pipeline source is, what did the buyer do to get into our pipeline? Demo request, cold call, trade show lead, something like that. And then attribution is for what channel or different thing did it come from, right? So I almost see them as two separate things. And then the last touch attribution channel will have a really interesting impact on the conversion source too. If you came from a LinkedIn ad into a demo request or organic search into a demo request, you got two varying levels of buying intent. And so you'd probably get different results. So the last touch attribution is interesting too, but when I've stopped calling it last touch because people think about that as like website conversion or something like that, and I really think about that as pipeline source.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have another
Thanks,
question. Bob, good to see you as always. It looks nice and sunny where you're at. I have another question related to paid social that someone wants me to ask on their behalf. So let me sneak this in, and then maybe we can touch on the next agenda topic and go back to AMA after. Yeah. So this is a question about LinkedIn paid targeting when your buyer persona can vary a lot from company to company. So for example, if you're marketing a solution that will be deployed across numerous business units, the actual sales decision or leading influence could come from anyone in senior management or to other leaders of those business units, but you have a limited budget, so targeting can be challenging. So what do you recommend in that situation? Let me know if you need me to restate any of that.
Spending money on LinkedIn ads is a hell of a lot cheaper than having your sales team do that type of work. So this is a go-to-market thing, right? I think that it's starting to look, and it's like we don't have enough budget in marketing, but it's like, well, you're being super inefficient on the sales side then, right? And so it's like we don't have enough budget to spend 2 cents to target a CFO and a CISO and whoever the buyers are with that information, but it's costing us probably $2,000 to $6,000 to have our sales team do one demo request, to do one demo with a buyer. And so people just have these costs all out of whack. It's so interesting. They got a question today from someone about like how fast is this stuff going to scale? And they think that marketing, you just like push a button and then all of a sudden like boom, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, get billions of dollars in pipeline, get a bunch of revenue, things like that. And I went back to them and I was like, how long would it take you to scale your sales team to 100 people? How long would it take your sales team to drive that much pipeline? It's no different in marketing. It's just using a different tool to get to the same outcome. And so people see that like, oh, getting our sales team from 5 people to 100 people to drive that much pipeline would be really hard. But for some reason in marketing, they're like, yeah, it should just go. It's just easy. And it just comes down to a general lack of understanding about what marketing is. It's like today, right now, demand marketing is just a better form of business development, just a more effective, more cost-efficient way to do what your sales team is doing for cold calling. That's it. Just getting information to your buyer in a different way that allows them to learn on their own independently, which allows them to come back to you when they want to buy, which leads to higher efficiency, sales productivity. And the whole reason of me saying that is that the answer is not to like pick one person. Like we have to target all these different executives inside of our target accounts, but because we don't have enough money, we'll just pick the CFO and just go with that. The root of the problem is that the company isn't valuing or isn't properly budgeting for what is necessary for these things to work. So I would go back and say, here's our addressable market. We got our top 200 accounts, and then outside of that, we got our next top 1,000, and then after that, we got the rest of our ICP, which is 7,000 accounts. We got 8,000 accounts total. And we got all those accounts, and if we just want to hit our strategic top 100 and we want to cover all of these different departments with all these different executives, with all these different buyer influencers, there's this many people in the audiences, and it would cost us this much money to deliver media to them on a consistent basis in a way that would be effective. And if we wanted to go into our tier 2s, and we want to hit all our ICP, here's what the amount of people that are in there, and here's what the cost breakdown would be. And then see what the deltas are. Like you got to see how big the gap is. But I don't think the answer is picking one buyer and doing it. I think it's getting your company to rethink why the budget is the way it is. That's what I would do.
I love that. Okay. For my good friend David, we want to go back to revisit last touch versus opportunity source. David wanted you to go deeper on that and restate really the difference between those, last touch versus opportunity source.
Most people take last touch and they sort of like blend it together. So it's interesting when you call it source. People think about HubSpot's original source property, right? So they're thinking about like Google, paid social, LinkedIn, organic search, referral, things like that. And so they think about there's a difference between the channel and then the activity that the buyer takes in order to get into pipeline. So the activity the buyer takes to get into pipeline, I call the pipeline source, demo request, free trial sign up, badge scan at a trade show, webinar, cold call, intent data to a cold call. And the reason that you break them out that way is because it's super indicative of the buying intent that the buyer has. And if you stack them up, like I mentioned, with these, you're going to get different win rates, different sales cycle lengths for each different source because it's reflective of the intent and how far the buyer has done the process on average. So with scale, you'll see these start to separate and deviate. And so if you're going to build out a model of like forecasting, planning, optimizing, things like that, I found that breaking it by the pipeline source is the best way to create accurate models and figure out where to prioritize and focus. Because if you stack them up and you calculate sales cycle like win rate, pipeline velocity, like the split the funnel analysis, and then you sort them by sales velocity highest to lowest, you'll typically see high intent website form submissions way higher, 10x, maybe 20x or more higher in pipeline velocity than any other source, web content, newsletter, trade shows, any cold call, anything like that, which allows you to say, okay, these are the places where I'm going to expend my energy and my budget to drive more results. And then you have the last touch attribution, or what I call the referral channel, or the channel, which is how did somebody get to where they're going to actually convert, which is more of a marketing attribution model, right? So on a cold call, there might not be anything. You could say like Zoom info, 6 Sense intent data, like you could actually develop some type of source about how the cold call happened if you wanted to. But most marketers are really looking at this and they're saying Google search, paid LinkedIn ad, referral from G2, right? Like referral traffic from G2, all those things. And they try and run analyses and optimize against the channel because they've been trained that way from ad platforms and attribution vendors, because they need to go back and they need to go to the CFO and dictate, this is how much I spent on G2 ads and this is how much I got back, regardless of whether the people that came from G2 converted on a demo, an ebook, some stupid chat thing, or anything else. And so the channel is not a great predictor of the pipeline conversion sources, or the win rates, the sales cycle lengths. Where they came from is not a great predictor. I find it to be a secondary predictor. And so that's the reason that I break them into two separate things. And I'm far less concerned about marketing last touch attribution for marketing, because attribution software is pretty flawed. So I'm way more, and you can clearly measure what happened with this buyer in order for them to get into our pipeline. And so it becomes a lot more objective. And then if you wanted to, you could build out separate sales processes, separate workflows. Like, it's unbelievable that companies do not sell differently to a buyer that's qualified. A CFO, you're selling to CFO as a buyer that comes in as a CFO at a perfect fit company and says, hey, I'd like to buy now. They get the same exact experience from a sales process as if a SDR cold called a random CMO and got them into a meeting. Blows my mind. And why do companies do it this way? Because they have outdated sales commission plans and sales territory plans that force people to do that, to route leads for sake of fairness, instead of prioritizing what does my buyer need and how do I re-architect my organization, my commission plans, my sales territories to deliver a best-in-class experience for my customer. When you remove the commission plans and you remove the geo territories, you can do some really cool stuff. You basically remove all of the blockers that hold companies back from doing better stuff from a customer experience standpoint.
David posed another question that I think is interesting.
Keep them coming. So this is great.
Is this another create versus capture distinction?
Not exactly. They're almost both capture. Right? So where they came in a demo request and where they like organic search to a demo request, it's two pieces of the capture sequence. I've just found that the pipeline source is a much better and more reliable predictor for sales velocity metrics, which is what really matters, right? The other piece matters a lot too. People that come from organic or direct and then convert on a demo are typically convert better than people that come from G2 or a paid LinkedIn ad into a demo. So there's some correlation there, but I think the pipeline source is a much better predictor.
I love that. Thanks, David. We circled back to that. Well, my AMA lineup is building up.
Let's roll.
Before we get into that, want to keep going, or do we want to talk a little bit about website content versus dark social content?
Yeah. I did a talk with a growth equity firm called K1 Ops a couple of weeks ago, and I had I explained something in a way that I'd never explained before that I thought was really interesting. So I've been hovering around this topic, but I think it's really interesting. Is that people need to think differently between whether they're making website content or dark social content. It's way different. And most companies just say, we have a content strategy, and they mix it all together. And then they end up going back and doing most of the website content because it facilitates easier measurement. It's easier to track. But there really are big differences between the two. Website content, things like your blog, things like a landing page, things like case studies that you put on your website, or a content experience platform if you want to roll that way, right? All those things that revolve around the idea that your website is a destination that people want to go to get information, which is not true anymore. Nobody wants to go to your website to get the information. They want the information where they are. And then you have dark social content that is content specifically made to be put in social networks or other different places where people already are. So instead of making the website the destination, and I'm going to say, I saw one today from the CTO of HubSpot, Dharmesh, and it was like, he made a LinkedIn post. It was probably one of his worst performing posts because he was like, I made this great talk. There's a link to the YouTube video in the bottom, and it had been posted for a while, and nobody had engaged with it because nobody wants to leave the platform to go to YouTube as a destination, whether it's YouTube or a different place. When you're in dark social, people want to stay on the platform. And so you need to be able to get it to a place where it gets consumed there, where people don't need to leave to listen to your podcast or the YouTube or to go to the website to get the real experience. And I'm going to break down some of the other differences. So that's like the core is, where is the content and how is it made to be consumed? On the website side, you have no potential reach. The content is there, and if somebody goes there and they think that they are like, this stuff is good, they can't like it. And since they can't like it, it doesn't get amplified in sort of certain algorithm to go and have other people see it. On the dark social side, there's massive reach. If you put out content that's good and a bunch of people start liking it, the algorithm gets signaled and says, I'm going to go show this to a bunch of other people. It's the same thing with email, right? When you send out an email, nobody's taking that email and forwarding it to 100 other people. Your email. But a lot of people will share, distribute, send messages for social content because it's more ingrained in what people do. This sort of goes into the next one. Website content gets shared very rarely. Very rarely. Dark social content gets shared a ton. Screenshots, links, actually hitting the share button in LinkedIn or somewhere else. on Instagram, taking a piece of content, sharing it in your story. There's tons of different ways built into the platform for content to be shared inside of dark social. Website content is really built for a desktop computer. It has been for a long time. If anyone knows, you click on one of these LinkedIn ads now, what happens? You don't even see the website anymore because you click on it. It takes a while to load. It shows up. You get hit with cookies, a chatbot, a modal pop-up asking to sign up for their newsletter, and you don't even see anything that's there. So you just peace out. Like nobody's website is built for a mobile device anymore. And all the social networks and things are native to mobile. LinkedIn might be the only exception. It's still very mobile. I'm not sure I would call it native to mobile, but every other platform is. Website content, the main discovery mechanism is through search engines. And in dark social, the main discovery mechanism is through the signaling that people are engaging with it. It gives it to people that should see it. So it's the difference between I need to go in there and I need to go to Google, have a specific thought in my mind, and search it in order to find it, versus I'm here every day. This algorithm is smart, knows other people that are like me that are liking this, and now it's going to show me the piece of content proactively. All I need to do is log in and wait. Another piece on the dark social side is that let's go back to the website side. Where am I? In the website content, you need to be. There's no signal or mechanism about whether or not the content is working, whether the buyer liked it, whether anything was consumed. You don't get the feedback. You don't get do they keep forums and blogs anymore where people leave comments? Probably not, because it's all legit bots and spam. So they don't have that feedback anymore that they used to have in blogs. In 2009, I can remember the comments inside of blogs were awesome. Super smart. You learned a bunch of stuff. Not anymore. You get all the feedback on social when you put out content from people. You get who's liking the content. What are they commenting? You get this feedback loop that you don't get in website content. So there's major differences between these two things. And the last piece that I'll say is that in order for the dark social content to work, it needs to be attention grabbing, and it needs to be something that people would consume out of nowhere without intent. It needs to be valuable enough for someone to actually go and consume that. It's much harder to break through in social, but if you can, the upside is so much higher for all the reasons that I just mentioned. And so I'm recommending for people is you need to decide, maybe split the teams, maybe we got to do something different to have two different types of content and probably two different types of teams and people that are working on it. So you got your website content team, which is mainly SEOs and maybe conversion rate people. And then you got dark social content, subject matter experts, social media people, designers, video editors, things like that. You have a very different team. You have a very different level of talent. You have a very different level of background, different goals. And so I'd encourage companies to really think about if they were going to restructure their team, that maybe thinking about it in two different ways like this would be helpful to separate your mind on what you're trying to do, because when you blend it together, you just end up regressing back to website content because it's familiar and easy.
That was cool. I haven't heard you talk about that. Do you believe that there are certain types of content that are best for social versus website? If you were to think about how do I optimize my website content versus my social content, top three for each, that makes sense given the distinctions and the constraints that you just went through?
It's not a difference of the information. It's a difference on how it's packaged and distributed, and then how it's aimed to be consumed, right? So my belief is that almost all content would be more effective when when translated and packaged for dark social. You could take the exact same thing, a case study on the website. We did this thing with GE Healthcare, our big enterprise customer. Here they are. They had this business problem, then they did this, and then look, they got a 67% increase in metric X, Y, and Z after they used our product for 6 months. There's the story. Everything's great. Maybe there's even a video in there. And instead of trying to get people to go to the case study on your website, you got to take the case study and the information and bring it to them. So how do you repackage that story and get it inside of LinkedIn, inside of YouTube, inside of TikTok? Like those are the... So it's less about the information and it's way more about how it's packaged.
Got it. It's almost like if you're pushing out content through dark social, it's educating, informing, building awareness. But then when you think about people coming to your website, they're not going to spend that much time. So it should be optimized for getting them the information that they need as quickly as possible. So it's also just like, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we got enough time for this, but we might. Just how buyers use a website today is way different than they used to. What a website is for: buyer enablement, product information, and converting on some level of thing. Either getting into the product through product-led or getting in touch with your company. That's it. Nobody's going there to hang out in your content experience platform for a couple hours and watch your videos. In 2014, social networks didn't really exist, and when you think about, they existed, but from a B2B standpoint, they were very immature. And so B2B buyers were not going. Maybe Twitter was the only one, and perhaps Facebook was starting to get started, but it was very early. And so B2B buyers would go to websites. They were at a desktop computer inside of an office that was a work computer. They had a monitor. They would go in and they would look at stuff, and they would go on their desktop computer to a website. They would look, they would find a PDF, they'd fill out a form, they'd read the PDF. And then once they were reading the PDF, someone on your sales team would call their desk phone and they'd be like, "How did you know to call me?" Because it was new. They didn't, so not a lot of people were doing it. And so that tactic was more effective then. And just the dramatic shift from that point in 2014 to right now, I just think it feels very obvious about why everything's moving in this direction. And let me try and go a little bit further here. It's just reframe. Yeah, I think I got my point. It's just reframing. What is the purpose of a website? It's not to store content anymore. It's to accomplish very specific buyer goals. Buyers have goals when they need to go through a journey in order to purchase things. You need to figure out what are those goals and where do I want them to accomplish them. And the fact of the matter is, most of the goals get accomplished in places other than your website.
Tatiana has a good question that I'll ask on her behalf to round out this segment, and then we can get into some fun, different topics in the AMA. So she asks, what does the perfect website size in pages? What is the perfect website size according to you? And should organic SEO budgets be slashed in favor of dark social content creation?
I don't know if there's a right answer to the ideal website size. Our website is probably, 10, 15 pages. But if you look, you can go into your website in Google Analytics and sort all the traffic, and you'll see that there are 3 to 10 pages that get a majority of the traffic, probably 80-90% of it, and then everything else is just noise. So there's one component there. So on the website side, when it comes to the search budgets, in a lot of cases, I respond to people you could do both, right? I'm not here. If you think that you can do both of them, then feel free. But from a focus standpoint and from a budget standpoint, if you're trying to maximize marketing ROI, putting your money in things that work the best is going to be way better for you. And so in 2017, when I stopped when we spent $1.6 million a year on trade shows, and I said, let's go scrutinize this. Actually, we're going to spend $600K, and I'm going to take $1 million back, and I'm going to use the $1 million to produce a podcast, do Facebook ads, create content, hire a content marketer, and distribute all that information on Facebook every day instead of waiting 362 days for a buyer to come back to our booth the next year. I can communicate with them every day on the internet. It's 2017, you know what I mean? Same thing exists in 2022, but this was just as easy in 2017, perhaps easier. And we got all of that different stuff, and then marketing ROI goes through the roof, because that $1 million spent over there drives way more results than the $1 million spent over here. And the thing is, you gotta know how to use the money in a different way, right? So if you take the money out of trade shows and then you go and do something that's like burning it in a trash can in the parking lot, you're not going to get the same ROI. So you got to have confidence in what am I going to do with that money? How is it going to be a more effective use of the money? But when you look at how buyers actually buy stuff, the reason that people use Google search today is just two core reasons: to get transactional information, what day is the Super Bowl, who invented this thing, what is this, how do I do this, I need a recipe for shrimp scampi, getting transactional information, which is what all blogs are nowadays. No opinion pieces, none of those things. It's literally just transactional information that's typically copied and pasted. That's one. The other one is to pass through Google to find where they really want to go to, through a branded search or something other than that. Branded search to go to a website, review sites, whatever those things are. Like, those are the two reasons that buyers mainly use Google search. The long tail searches, what is the best product for this? A lot of those searches now happen in dark social, in a community or a social network or things like that. People do not understand that the top of the funnel type of stuff, the buyers that actually want to buy stuff, the B2B buyers that are the executives, are not going to your blog and reading that anymore, because they have access to better information that they trust more in other places. And that shift is happening regardless. So if you want to keep investing money in long tail SEO to do that, then you can. But buyers are moving in the other direction, and it's very obvious. And the real answer, and the reason that my company's winning, is because instead of fighting it, buyers are doing this. I don't want them to do it. I'm going to resist it and try and keep them doing the thing that I want them to do because it's easier for me and I don't need to change. Instead of doing that, I lean into it. And so whatever the buyer wants, it doesn't matter what it is. I understand it, and then I can figure out how to make it work for me. And that really is the difference. Every other company wants to sit there because they don't want to change. They don't understand customers well enough, so they don't know what to change to. And they don't want to change because they think change is hard. Change is the only option.
That was great.
I fucking love that segment. Yeah.
All right. I feel like we'll have to come back to this topic in the future. I feel like there's more to be said, but I've got some really fresh and cool questions from some newer faces. So let's get to some AMA action. Liam, you're up first. Excited to welcome you to the show. Hey, welcome to Demand Gen Live.
Thank you.
Hey,
Chris, how are you?
Liam, what's up, man? Where are you calling from?
A heck of a lot. Winnipeg, Canada.
Nice.
Don't come. Yeah. Someone just thumbs me up. I live here. I disagree with the thumbs up.
Is that
I'll take it anyways. Yeah.
Is that a Blue Jays hat? What hat is that?
It is a Jays hat. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, yeah, to support Canadian sports.
Oh, yeah.
You live in Canada, right?
100%. I've been to their stadium. It's a nice place.
Yeah, it's fabulous. Random, I don't know about random, but sort of a like agency ops question for you, and it might be applicable to people starting in head of growth, director of demand gen roles. You get a client, and I'm interested to know how Refine handles this. You get a client. How do you handle their upfront executional expectations versus trying to implement a long-term strategy? So client comes to you, obviously, in order to you Refine not have this problem. Maybe in its earlier days, probably less now, in terms of proving that you can do what you say you have the ability to do, while also knowing that farther down the road, it needs to be a longer term strategy than them focused on the partnership as executional.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does,
and
yeah.
I'm sure you guys have some sort of framework that you've worked out over the years of doing this, but it's something I bump up against a lot. Client comes in, we need leads yesterday, and you're like, okay, that's fantastic, but realistically, it's a longer term than we're just going to be able to get you a ton in the next 30 days, but you still need to be able to prove that you said you can do what they're coming to you for.
Yeah. I mean, in your scenario, I think that there's two things. It's selecting the customer, right? So that customer, like how do you select the right customers that have the right mindsets? And number two, how do you set expectations with the customers so that they know what they're getting? And so and this is a thing that any business can have, when you have a lot of awareness and you have content that's working and you're dry and a lot of buyers are coming to you saying, hey, I want to buy now, you don't need to sell to every one of them if they're not going to be a good customer. The problem is that most companies do not have that, so they got to take any customer to get the revenue. And so when you're able to create a flow of customers, it creates not only a power from marketing and sales, but also in customer success. To say that we're perfect at this would be a total lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? There's always challenges here. But the expectations and choosing the right customers are a big one. And as we continue to evolve, one of the things that have happened for us is that our price point is no joke anymore, right? Like, we drive massive results. The ROI is huge, but the price becomes a really nice disqualifier because customers will disqualify themselves out if they want to go hire a $4K a month LinkedIn ad agency to go get them MQLs, because we're going to be 8 times as more expensive or more than that. And that's the customers that come and work with us see our work as an investment, not a cost. So those are a couple of the levers that have happened over the past 2-3 years since we've been doing this. It definitely was worse at the beginning. It was definitely way harder to manage customer expectations. It was way harder to get people educated on the philosophy. It was way harder for people to buy in. And over time, as we continue to publish our frameworks to document what we're doing, to improve our criteria of what makes a good customer for us, through all those different things, I think that we'll continue to have increasing gains on buy-in and alignment for customers that come in. The last piece that I'll say is that, short-term results for what? You know what I mean? The best way to drive results is to act long-term and do the right activities that are best for your customer. When you define results as revenue, and so when people think that they need short-term results, what they really need is short-term metrics to make them feel like they're moving forward. And so I challenge people, the thing that we've done here that's worked is if you change the goal, and you got to do this in the sales process, not when they're a customer, but you say the goal of marketing is to generate pipeline that your sales team wins at greater than 25%. How are you doing today at that? And when you move the bar from MQLs to pipeline that your sales team wins at 25%, everything that marketing is doing for the most part falls off. And which then says, instead of getting 10,000 leads, they're getting 500K a quarter in pipeline. And 500K a quarter in pipeline for most companies is not very good. And then you got 500K and you're like, oh, are you doing very good? Is the strategy that you have working right now? Maybe we should actually start thinking about a different activity. And it doesn't take long to drive results because your pipeline's at 500K, which is bad. We'll be able to make that move in less than 90 days. So the real key is getting people to change their mindset on what the goal is. And moving it to, and I've just found this metric to really work. A lot of people have picked up on it. I think it's going to be a great metric for people. Sales leaders love it. Is hero pipeline that your sales team wins at greater than 25%, which perfectly aligns what marketing's optimizing for against sales metrics. So sales leaders love it, and it creates a lot of cohesion, and it removes all of the garbage that marketing does right now. It just literally flags, it'll put it right in your face. All the things that we're doing right now do not get to that far in the sales process, which all that means is it's wasting a bunch of our sales team's time. So helping companies be able to change the goal is probably, I think I gave you 3 or 4 tips there, so I hope those were helpful.
Yeah, I had a ton of follow-up questions, but you happened to read my mind and answer them all as you thought through the process yourself.
Right on, man.
Which I appreciate.
I'm glad I nailed it. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Liam. It's good to have you on. All right, Matt, you are up next. Welcome.
Hey, first time attendee, but I don't know. I've been listening for about 4 months, and I think I've listened to everything since November or whatever that is.
Nice, fantastic to have you here.
So here's what I love about what you're saying, and the whole Refine Labs thing is I feel like you're talking about really fundamental marketing, like truth, right, for 2022 and where we're at. But I'm not working with, enterprise level SaaS companies. I'm working with professional services, accounting firms, IT companies, things like that. And so they're just dealing with huge markets, right? Total addressable market, could be almost any small business, and limited budgets. So what do we do to take the truth of the concepts and minimize it to say, like, what are the best things that you should be doing? My intuition is to say, let's say we're doing a LinkedIn strategy to narrow the target market kind of arbitrarily around geography or something, and then say, speak to the same audience again and again, base it a bit on what you can kind of afford to reach, because you're trying to guarantee distribution, get into their channels, and connect with these folks. And my question is, do you keep doing that with the same audience, or do you develop, say, good content and rotate into new audiences fairly often with the paid stuff? So a different, metro area or something like that. I don't know. I'm interested. What do you do when you've got a big market and a small budget? It's kind of like what you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. You make the market smaller. So whatever accounting firm, theoretically unlimited TAM. Refine Labs, marketing firm, theoretically unlimited TAM. You know what I mean? We could sell to B2C companies. We could go and work for car manufacturers. We could try and do marketing for Bank of America. We could do B2B. We could try and do enterprise. We could do all of it. But we don't, right? And so the number one thing that these companies can do is segmentation. So before we think about what we're going to do on LinkedIn, it's like whether you analyze the existing customer base and you say, what are the similarities between our top 20 customers, or our 20 longest standing, or our 20 happiest customers? That's one way to do it. But perhaps you don't actually have any of the customers that should be your good fit customers. So you should also be looking at what are other avenues that we may not be touching right now. But then you got to find who is this set of companies and how do we segment them so that we can drive our product and I call it product strategy, service strategy around serving this customer in a way that nobody else is doing right now, because we're segmenting. I'm just telling you exactly what we've done for our company, right? Segment, pick a segment that truly needs and is willing to pay for what you're delivering. Re-architect the service and the delivery so that it's perfect for those people, so you have an unfair competitive advantage to win against all their other alternatives and options. Then build new messaging around the new product directly for that segment, so that it becomes like, oh, this isn't for everybody, this is for me. Like, they're doing accounting software for car dealerships. I'm a car dealership, right? Whatever it is, but you have to making choices allows people to really see that. And then you get into the LinkedIn strategy, right? So it's like the things that I laid out are truly like the fundamental things, like who are we selling to, why are we targeting them, how does the product match, how do we price it appropriately for them, how do we message it, and then you can get into the promotion strategy. And that's what professional services firms suck at. Because they think that they sell a horizontal type of service that's not specific to anyone, and it gets viewed as a commodity. Like accounting firms, definitely in a lot of cases, right? I'm sure a lot of like even like tons of like consulting firms, agencies, like a creative agency that do RFPs all the time get very viewed as commodities because they've set up their service as a commodity. So that I could give you advice on like how to run LinkedIn, but in my view, the real answer is doing those steps up front, and then the LinkedIn stuff falls into place.
So let me ask this then: what? Let's say you've got a smaller company, say 5 to 10 million annual revenue.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the right number? Like, how narrow do you think they need to get that audience to be before it's narrow enough to be worth doing this?
There's no right or wrong answer here. It's really it's about what where the customer is, right? So like for us, B2B or B2C, B2B. Inside of B2B, software, manufacturing, medical device, financial services, professional services. There's a million different options. Okay, we want to go SaaS. Inside of SaaS, you can do publicly traded software, growth stage software, seed stage or pre-revenue. You can keep segmenting down, inside of that. Do they sell products that cost millions of dollars a year, $100,000 a year, $7 a month? And you can keep working down to understand. And the way to get there, you can do process elimination like I just talked to, but the easier way is to talk to people that are happy or that could be your customer. And the nuance, like the differences will present themselves qualitatively. So typically the reasons why people end up wanting to buy from you, there's some firmographic characteristics that are similar across them, but it typically is because of their mindset. Like there's something about the way that they think that makes them a better fit for what you're doing. So I'd like qualitative market research will help a lot in distinguishing that. But, for some companies it could be 1,000. For other companies it could be 50. For other companies it could be 100,000. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer on size. Ours is probably about 20K, somewhere between 10 and 20,000.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Awesome. Happy to help. Great question. I love the professional services questions because I'm living it.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Matt. Hope to have you back soon. All right, I'm going to keep the questions coming. Ryan, you are up next. Welcome to Demand Gen Live.
Thank you. First timer on live, but I'm listening for months. Huge fan of you, Chris. I'm about to take on a new CMO role.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I'm taking your entire philosophy and strategy to bring it into this market where none of the competitors are doing this. They're all on an old school lead gen model. And I'm going to bring in this demand gen model, make a splash, make a big difference for this company.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first steps is bringing in an SME, someone from the industry who's done the work or the job of the people that we're selling to, someone who's well known and influencer. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to figure out how to write a job description for this, and I don't know what the points are to include or like how to clearly communicate the key objectives and responsibilities. Like I know based on what I've gathered from watching you, what I think I'd want this to be, but do you have like a template? You're smirking. So.
I'm smiling just because I see where you're going, and I just have I think I have like the perfect answer for you. So let's help you out.
All right.
I would start something, and I would interview a bunch of people externally first. So like I'm not looking to hire this person on day one. I'm going to go out and I'm going to start the blah, blah, blah podcast, whether you publish it on audio or not, doesn't matter. And I'm going to say, who are my buyers listening to? And I'm going to go and I'm going to do 20 podcast episodes with all the people that my buyers listen to. And then when I do the podcast episodes at the end, I'm going to say, hey, do you know other people? Like I thought what you said here was really interesting. Do you know other people that are like doing on the topic? And maybe you could introduce to people. And then all of a sudden, within a couple months, you've interviewed 50 people that your buyers trust or like or think is credible, which gives you a lot, especially in an industry where if you're not very deep, like when I was selling into medical technology and different things like that, like I needed that process to understand what are these people actually talking about? How do I understand it well so that I can evaluate whether a subject matter expert is actually going to work or not? So through that process, you might find the person You know what I mean? Like, hey, I really like, you might get someone that's so aligned philosophically that you jive with or whatever, that you could potentially like, so you're doing sort of like interviews without interviewing. You're learning a ton about what your buyers think and what smart people think that your buyers listen to. So you're doing market research and learning at the same time. That would be my recommendation instead of hiring out of the gate. And I would try and get some stuff moving. So you get learning, you get production, you get some stuff on LinkedIn, because perhaps like through the activity of doing it, you have more of a body of work, so that somebody that you might want to show, you can say, this is what it's going to look like. You can show someone a vision, because they're going to be taking probably a pretty big chance on this. So the farther that you can get it along, I think the higher likelihood you have for success.
Okay. And then what do you publicly call somebody like this? I know that by industry it might change a little bit, but do you put like evangelist in their title? Do you put consultant, expert? Like what do you call it?
I've seen chief evangelist used. If they are if you're selling to neonatologists, then neonatologist could be the job title. You know what I mean? Expert neonate. So you could use the job title that they've done that's also messaged your buyer's job title because they've done it. You could use evangelist. So I think there are different ways to slice it depending on who the buyer is. And like, if there's a huge level of studying like in medical or in pharmaceutical or other places, PhDs, stuff like that, you probably want to use their title to draw the credibility in. If it's something that's different, you could use evangelist or, some level of solutions consultant or something like that. There are other ways to play it. But I think that you'll end up either at evangelist or the job title of your buyer.
Okay. Just one more follow up to it. Mm-hmm. How do you incentivize this person? Because I know it's a slippery slope. If I incentivize them for sales, I don't want them turning into sales reps or sales engineers, where then it just kind of erodes that trust. How do you package that? Is it just a salary and maybe a bonus for?
I don't think this person is expecting a variable comp plan. So I think that they would be fine with a salary and being able to do what they like to do with people that they like to hang out with. You know what I mean? So I don't think that you need to have some level of like, if we get 3 million impressions, you make an extra $60. You know what I mean? I don't think that there needs to be any level of that. And then how do you like measure their performance? I would measure it on deliverables and feedback and engagement from the audience. So I'd figure out what it is. Is it repeat attendance to our live events? Is it qualitative feedbacks? We survey people that come to our events every once in a while and see. Is it like overall engagement during the event? So how many people start versus how many people drop off within the first 15 minutes? Or there's a lot of different ways that you can, but I think this person trying to correlate their activities with revenue, I think drives the wrong behaviors and will be very difficult to measure. And so for those two reasons, I wouldn't do that. And it's the marketing leader's job. It's your job to make sure that what they're doing is correlating with revenue. I don't think that it's their job. I think it's the leader's job. Just like how I literally disagree totally with having SEO people get scored on how much revenue their blog drives. I think it's so dumb. Content people should get scored on putting out content that buyers like and get value from, and doing that on a consistent basis and having those types of things happen. And it's the leader's job of the strategy to say these activities drive these business results. So
okay, that was super helpful. Thank you. I do have one more.
Keep it
that's
coming.
Kind of on a different track.
All
right. As far as customer insights go, I've got some experience with doing this in the past, but not to the depth that you talk about and that I plan to do. And this company does need some serious positioning work in order to really stand out in the marketplace, which is why I'm also doubling down on an SME who's going to help lift that up. But what kind of questions can I ask customers to get hints or actual straightforward answers to a point of view that they would actually give a shit about? Like,
what type of product is it, just so I get a better understanding?
It's fleet management software.
Okay.
Those guys who have a lot of trucks out in the field that need to make their employees safer on the road to make sure they're efficient and productive.
Let me talk through a couple of ways that I've done it. This has been for hardware products, but I think that it's translatable in a different way.
Okay.
So step one for me is analyzing the business data. So I'm going to take our existing customer base, and then whether it's by product usage or retention metrics or different things like that, and I'm going to sort them. I'm going to look at all the top ones and all the bottom ones. I'm going to try and say, what is similar between these? Like, what are the trends? Why are these customers our best customers? And why are these customers the ones that are churning or the ones that don't use the product? Who are the ones that are highest paying? And try and see what are the similarities. Because when you do that, you're going to look at firmographic data, right? So like all these companies are based in this region of the country, or because they are this type of hospital, right? Or they are this size of shipper in your example, whatever those details are. You start to develop some hypotheses just based on the data, right? So these hospitals over here are more likely to use our product because they're based in the South and the Midwest where the most people smoke. I'm just making this stuff up, right? But that could be a reasonable hypothesis. And then I would go out to those actual hospitals and I would talk to people and I would understand why, like, show me how you use the product. Why do you put it on patients this way? And I just try and understand their rationale as to when they use it, why, and they're going to start to indicate how much value they get from the product while they tell you it. They're going to be excited about it. They're going to be not enthusiastic about it. They're going to talk about what they would rather do instead, about how it doesn't work or how it works. You're just going to, it's almost just being curious and open-ended is how you get the details. But show me how you use the product has been a really interesting one for me, because you'll see people's faces light up and you'll see people's faces like, this machine's been in the closet for the past 3 months. I don't even know how to turn it on.
Yeah.
So you might be able to get some of that through product usage statistics without going into the field. But going into the field is a really interesting thing. And since I've been doing this podcast, going into the field really hasn't been feasible, but it's starting to become feasible again. And so if that's something that you have budget for and it can work for you, even if it's local, I think those are some things that could give you some good insights, because then you can say, okay, my hypothesis was totally wrong. Like, these are the best customers, not because people are smoking here, but because this is happening, right?
Okay.
And then from there, you can start to figure out a reason why. You can do the same exact thing to say, what are the characteristics of bad customers, and do the exact same thing qualitatively to validate that or learn from it. And then you have a good sense of this is the segment that I want to go after. And then you position, once you've done that, you get to position around them because they've told you exactly why they use it and how much they like it. So that's the track that I would do to solve your problem, your goal is to just try and figure out who are our best customers and who are our worst customers and why, specifically rooted in tell me more about how you use the product in your day-to-day.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just really hoping I can get as bold as you to be like, you're doing your job wrong. We've got the new answer for you. We're changing the way fleet management is done. Something like that strong.
You could get there, but you need to do a lot of research. You need to be inside of their business. You need to understand the data. You need to have trust from them. You need to understand what's working and what's not. So the insights that you drive create the confidence to make bold statements like the ones that I make. Yeah. Because I literally know that it's true. I've been in hundreds of different Salesforce instances. I've talked to thousands of B2B SaaS executives, and so I have all the data, which is why I have the confidence level that I have.
Love it. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, really happy to help. Glad to have you here.
All right, Omar is up. He's got a good question for you. And then I'm getting a lot of questions about heroes and conversion rates related to that. So I might have you do some closing thoughts on that.
Cool.
But Omar, welcome to the show. I noticed you didn't wear your tux tonight.
It's at the cleaners.
Fair enough.
Good to see you all. Thank you,
Hey.
Megan. Chris, good to see you, brother. How you doing?
Things are awesome, man. Really good to see you.
Always good to see you. Always good to see you. So loved your post earlier today. Well, it's from a previous show, but about your 2022 predictions. And I completely agree with you that one of your predictions, I think is maybe number 2, is that B2B companies will win who learn from the B2C companies. Totally agree with that. And I think that was many years ago the thing that you and I first connected on, which was, the stuff in B2C works, right? It's really timely because I was just at a conference last week, and it was a big MedTech investor summit. So there's like 200 startups that are pitching. And believe it or not, one of the main topics that I was most approached about by these CEOs was that they were like, hey, we agree with some of the things that we've seen from you online and what you've written about. We definitely need to use digital, blah, blah, blah. And so every now and then it was, either growth marketing or demand gen, or like we want to use B2C strategies. And the one thing that I actually had to spend like 10 minutes explaining this to a CEO was like, that's great, but you can't measure it the same way. And so I figured I'd save everybody a lot of headache ahead of time and ask you that when a marketer internally at an organization persuades the board, persuades the CEO, and they say, hell yeah, we're going to take some B2C strategies. We're going to use social media. We're going to do X, Y, Z. Part of that is education and framing expectations, because if they don't, then they get measured like B2C campaigns, which is not how this works. So I can always like riff on that, but I figured I'd ask you, and that way you can provide some really great advice to young marketers out there who are going to get that opportunity. But I think framing it, framing expectations is going to be super important.
The best thing about B2C, especially like SMB B2C, is that the only way to measure the success of marketing campaigns is against revenue. And that's the mindset shift, right? And this is where everything about my strategy comes from. Is in B2C, there's no sales team. So it doesn't matter whether you get website traffic or ebook downloads or people to go to the cart page. What matters is, did they check out and buy something, right? And that's the only mindset that I bring. The mindset is that my job is to educate a buyer so much that if there was no sales team, they would hit checkout and buy this $50K ACV SaaS tool. And they would do it without a sales rep, because I've done everything that a sales rep would do in a process digitally so that people could buy independently. And that's really it's not about the tactics for me. The tactics are a byproduct of this way of thinking, which is that if SaaS companies were sophisticated enough to put a checkout button and people could buy the product without needing to go through a sales rep, people would do it. Product-led has already proved that out. And so, but they don't. But from a mindset standpoint, I'm thinking the same way. But that's what I want people to do. And when companies catch up and the technology catches up and they can do that, we'll be ready and we'll be crushing. Because then there's no vanity metrics to hide behind. So I believe the most valuable part of this is from the mindset standpoint. And then once you align on that, then the tactics become way easier. Because all that matters is whether people buy stuff or not. Whether they come through and check out or whether they go to the sales team and buy stuff, it doesn't matter. My mindset is, are people buying stuff? And then you can start to figure out what are the things that I'm going to do from a tactic standpoint to test those things. So that's the number one learning that I think it was a game-changing insight in my career. I built 2 e-commerce companies. Neither of them did tremendously well, but the learnings were life-changing for me.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I kind of went through the same arc. One kind of like add on to that, and I'll let you go there. I totally agree about measuring against revenue. Let's take the industry that I'm in, where it's like biotech and medtech, right? And so the sales cycles are at the very, very least 6 months if you're really good at what you're doing. It's really closer to 9 or 12. Do you think a good approach maybe is that, like, yeah, totally measured against revenue? Do you think part of it is maybe allowing the marketer to say, hey, I'm going to, because whenever you say B2C, the first word that comes out of everybody's mouth is like leads, and that's what they want to measure. And then you get on.
There are no leads in B2C.
There's no leads
not
in
in
B2B.
not in
Yeah,
not in direct to consumer. In some B2C industries, I guess there are leads selling cars, selling insurance.
There are no leads in B2C, but when you talk about B2C in a B2B environment, the first thing that people in B2B think, they're like, oh yeah, like B2C stuff, and so that's going to translate into leads for us.
Okay.
And so one of the thoughts that I'm wondering that might be a good approach is, do marketers perhaps, take the B2C approach, which is I want to have control of like how we educate the customers, the content that we use, all these different things, including all the way up to the point of demo. So instead of a salesperson demoing it, maybe you have, an on-demand demo, and then whenever that's done, then that can be handed off to a salesperson. That way the marketer has a little bit more control, and they're not being hounded by the sales team all the time. I'm just trying to think of a way that they can do this easily, get some good results, but then not immediately get, scored based on like how many leads you're bringing. Because that's what, at least the few people that went and did this, they come back to me and they're like on my ass about leads, So I'm trying to figure out like what's the easiest way for somebody to get a win and get these strategies implemented without getting off on the wrong foot. I don't know if that makes sense.
I gotta tell you, brother, like the reason that I don't work with companies that you work with is for this reason.
I know, man. You're the smarter one. I'm the idiot that came back. I'm like the prodigal son, and I have some hope.
I know. I've had hope, but I still have conversations with enterprise level companies that are in your space, and they just can't do it. And so it's like I respect you a lot for your courage and perseverance here, but you're pushing a boulder uphill, and I would consider waiting until the boulder is sort of like rolling the other way, or trying to figure out how do I maybe the product that you're trying to bring to them is too progressive and you got to slow it down. You know what I mean? But that's the fundamental piece is like it's how do I convince people, or how do I do this? And the people don't want to change. There's nobody pushing them to. There's nobody telling them to. There's nobody feels the pain yet, because every single one of those companies does all the same dumb stuff. And they only change when they have pain, as opposed to like the way that I wanted to test B2C in 2017, because I was literally like, we sold a machine into hospitals. It cost about $6,000 per machine. Some hospitals would buy 2, other hospitals would buy hundreds. And I knew that we could sell this e-commerce because we would have people come in and ask for a demo and then buy the product less than 14 days later from a sales rep. And they would have bought it in checkout and right there, but they couldn't. And the sales rep it took them 14 days to just set a meeting and actually go to the hospital and sell the deal.
Right.
And I would have loved, I was like, why don't we just put a buy now button here and see what people do? And it's just like companies are so stuck in their thinking. They were so married to their sales team that they just can't break out of it. It's the same ways that companies get married to their distribution channel, and it will eventually kill them. It's like you got to disrupt yourself in order to keep moving forward. And I just find that those, because of the regulatory requirements, because of that the products don't disrupt very frequently. There's, I think, a lot of reasons, but that space frustrates me because there's so much opportunity and nobody does it.
I totally agree. And what I would say is that I stopped trying to talk, convince people, and now I'm only working with people who get it and they're ready to go. But I'm just trying to make it happen faster, because there are a lot of marketers in our space that listen to you, they look up to you. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, how do we help people like that who are internal in these companies? They can make that change, right? And I think there's some glimmer of hope. I mean, look, just recently there was a company called Monogram. They raised $23 million in their Series A purely through equity crowdfunding, like in medtech. So, I have some hopes. But anyways, thanks for the answer, bud. It's
man. I love going back to to those things, because it was wild how well it worked. I wanted to, in 2018, I wanted to build an e-commerce store and sell medical technology, $100 disposables, $6,000 capital equipment, direct to consumer hospitals, no sales team, and it would have worked. And that company would be way bigger and would have disrupted an industry, and just would have scaled way differently had they done it. But
I'm going to send you the talk that I was on last week was literally about that concept, which was, can we set up an eBay style store and just get rid of salespeople? So I'll send you that talk when it comes out.
It worked for pharmaceuticals. It'll work it'll work everywhere. Just because the information that buyers need to make buying decisions is not in the head of a sales rep anymore. It's on the internet. It's in the heads of the peers that they trust. All right.
Hey, brother. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, man. I love being the closer. Oh,
were you deemed closer there?
He's going to be the closer for the questions, but I'm going to tee up
closer into the questions.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to tee up a closing segment for you, Chris. I've been getting lots of questions in the chat and a few DMs. We were talking about this earlier at the top of the show, but I think it would be really helpful for everyone if you could define what a hero is. And you had mentioned closing heroes at least 25% win rate. So define what a hero is. How does something become a hero? Where did you get that 25%? Lots of questions about that. So I think I know it's a piece of the broader picture that we're going to talk about soon, but break that down for the team here.
HERO, spelled HRIO, which stands for high intent revenue opportunity. A buyer that comes through a high intent source through your website. I want a demo. I want to talk to your sales team. Potentially a free trial. We're working on figuring out exactly how that works. Through a high intent source that then gets into your enterprise sales team's funnel directly from there and gets to the deal stage where those opportunities win at greater than 25%, which is most likely stage 2 or stage 3. Oftentimes stage 3. In a 5 to 6 step sales process, typically stage 3, which is post demo qualified by an AE. And the way that you can measure that is you look at all the opportunities created by one of those high intent sources. You take all the sources, so demo, contact us, whatever else you have on your website. You date stamp when stages move from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, so you can know exactly when they move to certain stages and then when they stop moving forward in stages and instead move to close lost. So you'll know how far did they get and then where did they get to close lost. And you can take all of the ones that made it to a certain stage and you can say, okay, all the ones that made it to stage 2, how many of them went to close 1 and how many of them went to close lost? And I'm only going to look at closed opportunities, not including open opportunities. Okay. So then we had 25 that went to closed 1, and we had 75 that went to closed lost. That would be 25% win rate, or let's just call it 24% to make this real. So we have 24, and then we have 76 that moved to closed lost. So we have 24% win rate at stage 2. It's for 24, not 25, which means that we have to go and measure what stage 3 is. Stage 3 ends up being 31% win rate, so we are optimizing for stage 3. But then what happens is you got 31% at stage 3 in the deal stage. And then you go and hire some performance marketing agency and they start running a bunch of stuff, driving bad stuff into your funnel. And then stage 3 win rates go from 31% and then over the course of 3 months, 28%, 26%, 24%. And when the win rate drops below 25%, what happens? Marketing's goal changes to stage 4. And so the key here is that sales performance metrics determine marketing's goal. No better way to get alignment. This is like, some people call it the engineering mind in my brain. I don't know, but when you're running a system that optimizes itself, you pick a metric that matters and then you optimize around that one. And then if you start getting off track, you got to change the position and what your goal is. And then if the win rate gets better, so we have some companies that started their stage 3 win rate was 23% when they started working with us. And last quarter, it was 46%. So at the beginning, their hero was stage 4. It was 23% for stage 3, which means that stage 4 would most likely be more than 25%. And now their stage 3 wins at 46%, and their stage 2 wins at 25.5%, which means that their hero metric used to be stage 4, and now it's stage 2. Can you believe that? This company, a meeting booked by an SDR, they win 1 out of 4. Not even sat meetings, booked meetings. They win 1 out of 4 opportunities that get to a booked meeting through this system. That is real efficient. That is real scalable. That is real aligned with your what your sales team wants. And so that's the metric, that's the rationale as to why. And then you pick, instead of MQLs, SQLs, MQAs, pipeline, influenced revenue, or any of the other dumb metrics that are early stage that let marketers do something easy and hit a metric that doesn't matter to sales, you force your marketing team to optimize and report on something that matters to your sales team. And like I mentioned at the beginning, sales leaders love this. It's been crazy over the past year to see how many more sales leaders, CROs, heads of sales, are the people that are actually coming and saying, hey, we want to work with Refine Labs because they see that they need this level of insight and they need this level of performance in order for a sales leader to hit their goals, and they know that it's not working. And boy, is it it's a clean pitch. And if you're a marketing leader, go into your sales team when you're not aligned and say, hey, it feels like we're not aligned because last quarter, marketing hit their MQA target. We actually got 156% to target, but sales was 66% to quota. It doesn't feel like we're aligned, and I think it's because my team is optimizing for a metric that doesn't map to your team's outcomes. What I want to do instead is I want to change marketing's goal to something that gets directly aligned with your team's outcomes based on the win rate of the deals that we put into your pipeline. That's how I'm going to change the metric, and we're going to move from MQLs, MQAs, whatever, and we're going to move to this. And if we're not delivering on this metric, it's at least aligned, and we'll be able to know. And then when sales hits 66% of target, marketing does too. And so we'll be publishing a lot more details on this forthcoming. This is part of the framework that I believe companies will use in exchange for the double funnel and different things like that, because unlike just publishing a simple chart that says take your accounts and cold call them and take your leads and cold call them and you'll get opportunities out of it, we actually do this on 50 companies. We figured out what the nuances are. Like the companies that are building these frameworks, Topo, never have done it themselves, never run that model, just tell people what to do. And then oftentimes those types of models break down in theory. When you put it into practice and you actually have to do something and you put it together, it doesn't work as well because nobody's actually battle tested it. So keep an eye out for when that all rolls through. We're putting the finishing touches on, and look forward to sharing it all with you. I think it's going to be a game changer for B2B marketers and market. I would think it's going to be a game changer for B2B companies, not marketers, for companies, because it's not just the marketing team anymore. It's the sales team, it's the business development team, it's basically the entire commercial team needs a new framework to operate in that sets them up for success.
That was perfect, Chris. Covered all the points.
Right on. All right, people. Well, we'll be getting more into those details. Would love if you got any feedback. If that wasn't clear, if you have questions, I'll stick around in the chat for one more minute because your feedback is super helpful. If something wasn't clear, or you have questions, or something doesn't make sense or whatever, I'd love to hear that so we can continue to try and document and publish this really clearly. And I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. I think that I'm targeting within the next 60 days, hopefully, maybe sooner. And if there's a couple of companies that want to sort of beta this, then let me know. Would love to get that in your hands a little bit sooner and collect your feedback and see where everything's resonating and what's not. It's been an awesome episode. Appreciate all of you being here. looking forward to getting back after it next week. And we got the keynote on Thursday, so if you can make it there, I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about, but I am going to bring it for those keynotes. I do. And so I'm looking forward to seeing anyone there that can make it. That'll be Thursday, March 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a